student loans, any type of debt, in my opinion, is terrible. I don't believe in carrying debt throughout a lifetime, whether it's a mortgage, a car, a credit card, student loans. I'm a person that really believes in having liquid and being able to live a life without being burdened with an $800 a month student loan payment. And really, the premise of my book is again, it's how to slay the student loan dragon, and kind of how I overcame it through some tips and tricks in the book. But it comes down to a couple things, right? It comes down to need versus want in life, and you can use that through any type of financial fiscal responsibility you think of, whether it's budgeting and pay off a house, student loans, credit card, whatever. Do you really want? Do you really have to have what you want, or do you just want it? Do you need it, or do you want it, right? Is kind of what my whole premise is. And that can come down to anything. And it's like, if you sacrifice short term and make some additional payments, you're going to be able to be debt free. And I can't stress enough the freedom it is to be debt free. I can tell you, after I paid off my first master's degree, the $74,000 in 23 months, I did have an influx of cash. I saved a significant amount of money. And without that money and without that savings, I would never have been able to lay the foundation to build my business and to start a business. I mean, I didn't make money for 2 years. And in having to think about making student loan payments during that time, it just would have never worked, right? I would have still been in a job or whatever it was. And so, I mean, again, those were the short-term sacrifices allowed me to do the things I do now with the consulting. I do have a full-time job as a professor, but that really is what it comes down to. And my second piece, and I tell this to my friends and family all the time about, advice on financials and payments and things like that, is like, you got to learn where you can make cuts. And the $7 coffee you're drinking every day, or the $10 pack of cigarettes, or the $100 restaurant bill or bar, or whatever it is. And I'm all about supporting local business and small business. They're not trying to offend anybody in that one. But at the same time, you got to make cuts. And then once it starts to hurt, you're going to make even more cuts to your budget. And then you're going to start to make progress. I mean, right now, in my opinion, on the federal loans, is the perfect time to be making payments, because there is no interest accruing. It's all principal at this point. Like, why would you not, if you can afford to make student loan payments right now on 100% principal without that interest, you could make some astronomical progress over the next 12 months on your loans. There is no guarantee that the government's going to pay off anybody's debt at this point. That's a talking point, from a politician. So those are things to think about when you're talking about, debt, is just, where can you make cuts? Do you really need it, or do you just want it? And then if you can hit the principal with everything, you're going to make a ton of progress at the end of the day.
So we're talking, you mentioned the fact that, so there's a moratorium in effect. So I guess this could be you kind of touched on it a little bit. So interest rates are currently, correct me if I'm wrong, they've been put on pause, correct?
They've been put on pause, I believe, either through the end of October or through the end of the year 2021. I think it's just through October for federal backed loans. Private loans are different, right? It's only federally backed loans. And so you have a whole different market out there where, people still might be having payments, or there might be interest accruing. So yeah, the federal loans there's a moratorium on payments and interest at this point. You're absolutely correct on that. I would probably say through 2021, if not longer, based on what happens with the virus and the economy. So with interest rates, what do you think / why are the interest rates for these student loans kept so high compared to other personal, business, auto, home loans, compared to any other loan that you can get? Why are student loan interest rates so high? Well,
what do you think about that?
I mean, we could ask the same thing about the credit card industry as well, when they're charging 25% APR and things like that. I mean, to me, a lot of times the interest rate on student loans follows the Fed and what the interest rates are, how they drive that. I like, there is one thing I agree on about student loans and about the whole industry needing to be changed and evolved. I completely agree. I think student loan interest rates should be no more than 1, 2, 3% at the most, not 4, 5, 6, 12, 15%. There is really no reason. And I mean, again, I think some of that is that predatory lending where people are desperate in a secondary market to get loans to finish a degree. And hopefully they do finish that degree where they've got to go to a private lender. And then the lender is almost like a loan shark that says, okay, here you go, but it's going to be at 15%. I mean, that's kind of the way I see that. The way I understand the federal loans is it follows the, kind of what the Fed sets as the interest rate. I mean, one of my older loans is at 6%. A couple of my newer loans are at 4%, whatever was set by the Fed. So I have seen a reduction. I mean, the highest I've seen in when I've paid 7, 8%. I mean, I completely agree that that's an unacceptable number for interest on a student loan because, when I first started this journey back in 2012 with my first master's degree, I watched the interest accrue on $74,000. It was easily $100 a week just in interest. And that's what motivated me to go out and pay my debt down. It's like somebody else is getting rich off my hard work. That's unacceptable. And so that's kind of why if you watch the interest, if you're watching that stuff like a hawk, it's going to make you mad enough to go out and make additional payments and find ways to pay it off quicker because the only people getting rich are the government or the banks in charge of it. And so if you're watching it that closely, I think it does motivate people to take the additional step and make some of those additional payments as well. So
we've covered moratorium.
and not everyone's in my situation. And I know that's an argument that like, okay, you make a lot of money and you're right. And I work 3 or 4 different jobs and I've been able to generate a significant amount of money to do what I've done and basically live debt free everywhere else. I don't carry credit card debt. I don't carry a mortgage payment. I rent the same as you do. And I don't carry any type of vehicle payment either. And so everything the last 3 years has gone, everything I earn is go to student loans. I mean, I think and again, for people that don't earn, a higher income, I think you have to prioritize, basically your Maslow's hierarchy of needs is you got to make sure you have the shelter. You've got to make sure you're taking care of your safety and health, the food and things like that. And then if there's anything additional, obviously you can put toward your student loans. I mean, in everyone's situation is different. Some people do have medical debt. Some people have kids, which makes it harder to make some of those payments. There are options to refinance some of that debt at a lower rate as well. I mean, I think that there's going to be an uptick in that market. There are certain employers that you can work for that will help make payments on that. I just read an article today where there's 20 employers, or there was an article on Student Loan Hero regarding employers that are helping people make some of those payments. Working for a nonprofit, after 7 or 10 years, that debt gets wiped out, or working for a federal government agency, there's that option as well. I mean, again, so that there are, military could be another option to help relieve that burden. And again, I mean, at the end of the day, it might be an additional job for a while to help kind of knock that down. But yeah, I mean, if you're making a lower amount of income, it is going to be harder to make significant dents in that student loan debt. And again, I'm not opposed to some type of reorganization in the student loan industry. I think it is somewhat predatory at times. I would be the first to admit that. I think the interest rates are too high. I think the bankruptcy laws are very aggressive against student loan debt, where people like that have 200,000 in debt making $15 an hour, they'll never pay that off. I mean, and so the Brunner rule from the 80s needs to be, the Brunner test from the 80s needs to be looked at. And I think they're starting to ease that a little bit. And again, making it maybe where there's a runway of someone like you as an example that's making less money in the beginning of their career. You start out with less payments and maybe not interest accruing as quicker, but then it balloons into a little bit more of a payment once you get into your career. I mean, so there are some opportunities, I think, out there, for people that might be like making less money, if we were to look at potentially like reorganizing or doing something in that industry besides just mass debt payoff. And I don't think that in my opinion, is just, it's not the answer, and I would never agree with that at this point. But I mean, I agree with supporting people 100% and trying to find ways to help drive payments and to help people live the American dream and not be burdened with 60, 70, two, $300,000 in student loan debt. That's not right either. So
Kind of, it's a question I don't have written down, so I hope it doesn't take you catch you too far off guard. There have been rumblings, and I don't know if anything has been said officially, but there have been ideas thrown around in the U.S. government about potentially you doing community service and stuff, and you do so many hours of community service that knocks off so much of your federal debt. This would be federal based debts. What do you think about that sort of idea? Community service for getting rid of some of that student debt.
yeah, and I mean, I think there's already programs like that in place with like going to volunteer for Peace Corps, like Teach for America. I think there are programs such as that already in place. I mean, community service. Yeah, I mean, I think if you can manage stuff like that, I'm okay with looking at it as solutions to help, offload some of that debt. I mean, as long as there isn't abuse and corruption in that system where they're saying somebody's doing 1,000 hours and they're doing 5 hours or whatever it might be, I think that's a viable option, and I think we should be exploring some of those things to help people with student loan debt and making sure that we are setting up even the next generation to hopefully become debt free, or not. If you are choosing to go to college, you're not becoming strapped with $100,000 in loans. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. I haven't heard a lot about the community service is debt forgiveness, but it could be a viable option. And I think that the government should explore looking at different ways to do that, and making sure it's a fair system across the board as well. So
So we've talked a little bit about COVID and the moratorium, but in your opinion or in your observation, what has COVID done to the student loan problem in America?
well, again, I think that anyone that's going to college now, you're still taking out loans to take classes. I mean, as I finish my third degree here, I'm down to two courses at this point over this. I mean, last winter 2020, summer 2020, and now winter 2021. I still borrowed $18,000 to take classes and to finish that degree. I mean, and I think the only thing it's done is put a freeze on interest rates and that accruing at this point in payments. I don't think it's really done anything to help solve the overall problem of the $2 trillion we have outstanding in student loan debt, whether it's federal or private. I don't know that it's done anything but kind of just delay and kick the can down the road, like we tend to do with everything in the government at this point. Instead of setting budgets and trying to balance and things like that, we just put in monthly or weekly things and just hope it goes away down the road. That's all it's done at this point, is just delay the inevitable. So
All right, so to the people that I'm sure you've heard this before, you've seen online or heard it in conversation, people that say, quote, don't go to college, go to trade school, you make more money, it's cheaper. What do you say to those people?
I said this the other day to my friend's son who did like a career interview with me. It's the return on investment. And number one, it shouldn't rely on an 18-year-old to be making those decisions. I think parents, teachers, advisors, mentors should be involved in those decisions with people prior to them strapping out and signing on for $100,000 in student loans. It's return on investment, whether it's welding program or whether it's an MBA or an HR program that I've been through. What is the ROI at the end of the day on the degree or potential career options you're going to get? And again, just to kind of share a little bit about my background, I went to community college at TC3. I have an associate's degree, so that saved me 2 years of heavy debt at a private school. I finished my bachelor's degree at Elmira College. I had 20,000 when I left there. And then I worked for 3 years and went back to graduate school at the University of Illinois. I moved out to Champaign, borrowed a bunch of money. I did have some scholarships when I went out there as well. But, at the end of the day, I walked away with $73,000 in student loan debt in December of 2011. I was in a unique situation where for my undergraduate degree, and then I finished my master's degree, I doubled my salary getting a master's degree. And I know that that doesn't happen with everybody, but I took a job in a very, unique area in the country, knowing that it was a short-term couple-year assignment to get those student loans paid off. And so sometimes you got to look at taking jobs out of the area or maybe out of your specific niche where you wanted to be in, and you might be able to make more money in the short term. So my point to the whole situation is it's return on investment. I truly believe education used the right way, whether it's a trade school like a welding, machining, or a business program like I teach at Elmira College, you can go do whatever you want. It's just how hard do you want to work to get to where you're going to be? And then what's your return on investment is the other thing you got to take a look at. If you're going to borrow $100,000 and the career field at the end of the day is going to pay you 30 or 35, that's not a good investment. And I think anybody would agree with that at that point. I mean, and again, I'm in a generation where it was like, go to college, sign, who cares about the student loans? And I have friends now in their late 30s like me who owe $225,000 in student loan debts that they're probably never going to get out of student loan debt at this point. I mean, they've chosen to live in a higher area, New York City, where it's a higher cost of living. And so you make those sacrifices. And again, those are things that should all be coming into play. And I mean, I do sympathize with people that have student loan debt, but I mean, again, I've paid off hundreds of thousands of dollars at this point pretty quickly. So there are ways to do it. It's just, you've got to get tricky and get creative. And in my opinion, get angry. I mean, why is the government and other private banks making money off your hard work? That's where you got to think about it as well. So.
So real quick, so we've discussed the moratorium and the stop on interest rates. Are there any pitfalls with this moratorium on interest rates, or is it mostly a good thing?
I mean, I don't necessarily have an issue when we've got high unemployment, we've got job insecurity. I think the only concern is, when we decide to push play again as an economy and everything starts to come back to whatever we're going to define normal as in the United States in a year and 6 months, 8 months, whatever it might be, people have become now, I guess, somewhat, lax on making those payments. I do hope people are still making payments on their principal, but a lot of people, I'm assuming, just checked out and haven't paid anything. And then when we say push play and in 6 months or 3 months, you got to start making payments again, what's that going to look like? And is there going to be a complete rebellion at that point within the society and all the people that owe hundreds of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars? I think that's the bigger concern is, are we going to be ready as a society to begin making payments on the outstanding debt that's just sitting there? I mean, it's a concern for me from a financial standpoint. Is this the next bubble that's going to burst like the housing market, like the tech boom the tech bubble that burst in the early 2000s? That should be a concern to everybody at this point related to student loans. And I mean, just eating $2 trillion in student loans is not going to serve the economy well at all. So
branch off of that. You said the word rebellion, so this question came to my head. Now, obviously, if someone is just like, screw it, I'm done, not going to pay anymore, they go after their creditors or whatever. If millions of people say that, what happens?
Well, I mean, I think millions of people haven't been making payments. And I mean, I sympathize they haven't been able to afford it because the system is broken. I mean, again, it's just something that it's going to impact everybody long term. Look, they'll garnish your Social Security check in 40 years or 50 years. That's how the system works right now. I mean, I know people that's happened to where they haven't paid student loans and they'll take it right out of your Social Security. I mean, you're not going to be able, your credit's going to be destroyed. You're not going to be able to do what you want to do at the end of the day. Is it really something that you want to do, or is there a way to make a minimum payment and kind of look at maybe refinancing and working with these companies to ensure that your credit stays intact and you're able to do the things you might want to do, whether it's travel, buy a house, buy a vehicle. I mean, again, you don't want that falling around in some garnishment the next 30 years out of your paycheck and then into your Social Security. So I mean, it's just going to sit there as accruing debt at this point, right? I mean, I don't think anything's going to happen except that you're going to have the collection calls come into your house, your work, whatever, letters and things like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, does the taxpayer eat it? I mean, or does it go back on the taxpayer? Maybe, maybe not. It's probably just going to sit there as just dead at this point. I mean, if they free up some of the bankruptcy laws, that might impact some, but I don't think it's going to impact everybody at this point.
And I was 2007, 2008. I was a bit young. I didn't understand that particular bubble that burst. So could you explain, hypothetically speaking, if this student loan bubble burst, what that would look like for the average person, like me or like our viewers, and what that would mean for the economy as a whole?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's federally backed, so I mean, any federally backed loans, I don't know that it's going to have a major impact, but I mean, if you've got people that are not making payments on private loans, you could have like another bailout situation for banks coming to plead for tax money and backing from the Fed that they're going to go under because people are not paying some of these loans. You could see a collapse in some of the academic world as well, where people are not going into private schools, like in Elmira, or like, some of the private schools around the state, around the country, where they're like, I'm not going to take on any more loans. It's too expensive. I mean, and I think we're seeing that evolution right now in the academic world anyway. So you could see like colleges start to shutter because of the bubble bursting as well. I mean, it could impact the job markets, I mean, like it did when the housing market somewhat, collapsed in the financial market in 2008, 2009. It just has a domino effect, right? I mean, from an economic standpoint, you have someone like me, and people I know, high earners that are strapped with $100,000 in student loan debt for the rest of our lives. We're not going to be able to potentially save for retirement. We're not going to be able to go out and buy new cars, new houses, travel when we can travel again. Again, it's a domino effect long term on people actually stimulating the economy when all your paycheck is going towards student loans. I mean, so that's a part that not many people think about, is the lost generation of income based on people not being able to afford to go to a restaurant. I mean, and so those are things that you got to think about as well. There's a whole domino effect that could impact if there is some type of collapse, or if you can let this debt to continue to accrue. So it's a double-edged sword for sure.
And that's really all I can think about in terms of questions. So, is there anything else you'd like to say regarding student loans?
No, I mean, I sympathize with everybody that has student loans. I mean, I'm blessed to be in the position I'm in, and been able to write a couple books about my experiences, and they've paid it down, as quickly as I possibly can. And again, everyone in this country should take any type of debt serious and get out from underneath that as quick as you can. Make the sacrifices short term to reap the benefits long term, and know the difference between need versus want, and know where you can cut and trim in your budget, and then execute on your plan. Reward yourself once you've reached a milestone and a goal. And I think, if people are, become used to living debt free, it changes your life. It really does. It changed mine. It'll probably change it again. And, as soon as I get this other 18,000 wiped out. But it is a tricky situation. And then I wish everyone best when they are working towards getting, becoming debt free. And it is, it's a great feeling to be debt free. That's all I can say at the end of the day. So, and I mean, if people come with questions, I'm always happy to answer anything I can. I mean, again, I I feel bad for you and for my friends that have student. I frankly wish we could do something to get people out of this debt. I mean, it's not a good situation. I completely agree with everybody. So,
And
but,
the most recent book is titled "How to Slay the Student Loan Dragon." Correct? I believe
yep.
it's by Matthew.
Slay the Student Loan Dragon: Tips and Tricks on How to Conquer the Student Loan Game.